Give us the Omega. The command echoed through the hotel hallway just as I slammed the heavy suite door behind me and leaned against it, struggling to catch my breath while rain hammered the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Seattle. I had only wanted to survive the worst storm the city had seen in years after the conference organizer accidentally handed me the wrong key card, but somehow I had stumbled into the most expensive presidential suite in the Sterling Crown Hotel. I slowly turned around, expecting an empty luxury room, only to find four impeccably dressed alpha billionaires staring directly at me from the other side of a polished walnut conference table. Every instinct told me to apologize, explain the mistake, and leave before security arrived, yet none of them looked surprised to see me. The tallest man rose first. His tailored black suit looked untouched despite the long evening, and his icy blue eyes remained fixed on the silver bracelet around my wrist instead of my face. His calm expression somehow felt more intimidating than anger ever could. The silence stretched for several long seconds until another loud knock shook the suite door. "Open the door," an unfamiliar voice shouted from the hallway. "He does not belong with you." My pulse quickened. I had noticed someone following me through the lobby earlier, but I assumed it had been another hotel guest. Now the voice sounded determined, almost desperate. I reached for the door handle without thinking, but the man in the black suit stepped forward before I could move another inch. "Stay behind me," he said quietly. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. The other three alpha billionaires immediately stood beside him without exchanging a single word, forming an invisible barrier between me and the entrance. One calmly closed a sleek laptop filled with confidential financial reports. Another pressed a button that locked every electronic access point inside the suite. The third silently pulled the window shades halfway down before glancing toward the security monitors built into the wall. None of them seemed frightened. They seemed prepared. I swallowed hard, trying to understand why four of the most powerful businessmen in America would react as though they had been expecting someone exactly like me. "I think there has been a mistake," I finally managed to say. "I was assigned this room by accident. I can leave right now." The man in front of me studied my face for another quiet moment before lowering his gaze to my bracelet again. His expression changed so slightly that I almost missed it. Relief. Not triumph. Relief. The pounding on the hallway door suddenly stopped. The silence that followed somehow felt even heavier than the shouting had been. Then the alpha looked directly into my eyes. "No," he said. "Someone wanted you to find this room." My heart skipped. "What are you talking about?" None of the others answered. Instead, the alpha slowly reached into his jacket pocket and removed an old photograph. Even from several feet away, I recognized the smiling little boy standing beside a woman whose face I had spent my entire life trying to remember. The little boy was me. My hands began to tremble. Before I could ask another question, the alpha quietly whispered words that made the entire room fall silent. "We finally found him." My eyes remained locked on the old photograph while countless questions raced through my mind faster than I could ask them. The woman smiling beside the little boy looked familiar in a way that felt almost painful, as though a forgotten memory had been trying to reach me for years. I slowly lifted my head toward the alpha standing only a few feet away. "Who are you?" I asked quietly. "My name is Damien Cross," he answered without hesitation. "And you are safer here than anywhere else in this city tonight." Before I could respond, another alpha stepped closer. He looked slightly younger, wearing a charcoal gray suit with thin silver stripes and carrying himself with calm confidence instead of cold authority. "Julian Hayes," he introduced himself. "I monitor information, security, and anything that threatens our companies. Someone altered the hotel reservation system this afternoon. You were never supposed to receive your original room." My confusion only deepened. Why would anyone change my reservation? Julian turned the laptop toward me. The hotel reservation screen displayed my name beside the presidential suite instead of the standard conference room package my employer had booked weeks earlier. Every change had been made less than 1 hour before I arrived. Another alpha leaned casually against the marble fireplace with an expression that almost looked amused despite everything happening around us. "I am Blake Sterling," he said with a friendly smile. "My family owns this hotel. I checked the servers myself. Someone with executive access replaced your room assignment and erased every digital record of the original booking." He paused before adding, "Whoever planned this knew exactly where you needed to end up." The fourth alpha finally closed the leather folder he had been reading. "Nathan Brooks," he said. "Corporate attorney." Unlike the others, his voice sounded calm enough to lower the tension inside the room. "Whether you trust us or not, there is now a legal problem." The person outside was carrying false hotel credentials. "Security has already confirmed he does not work here." I looked from one face to another, hoping someone would finally explain why complete strangers were acting as though my arrival had been expected. "You all keep talking like you know me," I said. "I have never met any of you." Damien glanced once more at the silver bracelet around my wrist. "You have not met us," he replied. "But we have spent years searching for someone wearing that bracelet." Instinctively, I covered it with my other hand. My adoptive father had given it to me before I left for college. He always insisted I should never lose it, even though neither of us knew where it originally came from. "It is just a bracelet," I whispered. Julian slowly shook his head. "It is much more than that." He opened another secure file showing an enlarged photograph of the exact same bracelet resting on the wrist of the woman standing beside the little boy in Damien's photograph. The design matched perfectly, including a tiny engraved cedar tree that I had never noticed before. A strange chill ran across my shoulders. How is that possible? Blake carefully placed a glass of water on the coffee table within my reach without stepping into my personal space. "Because the woman in that picture wore the original bracelet," he said gently. "The one on your wrist was made as its twin." My heartbeat grew louder with every answer because each explanation created two more mysteries. Nathan checked his phone before looking toward Damien. "The weather service just extended the emergency advisory," he announced. "Every highway leaving Seattle is closed. The airport has suspended departures until morning." Damien nodded once. "Then nobody leaves tonight." I immediately shook my head. "I cannot stay here. My employer will be looking for me." Blake gave a sympathetic smile. "Your employer already checked out 30 minutes ago. Every conference attendee was relocated because of the storm. You are officially the only guest still assigned to this floor." That made no sense. Nothing about this night made sense anymore. I reached into my pocket for my phone, hoping to call my father, but the screen displayed only one missed voicemail from an unknown number. My hands trembled as I pressed play. A woman's calm voice filled the silent room. "If you are hearing this, Evan, they finally found you. But do not trust all four of them." The woman's voice disappeared, but the silence she left behind felt even louder than the storm outside. I stared at my phone, replaying the message in my mind again and again. She knew my name. She knew these for Alpha Billionaires would find me. Most disturbing of all, she warned me not to trust all of them. I slowly looked around the luxurious suite. Damien remained perfectly still beside the conference table, his expression unreadable. Julian had already opened another encrypted file on his laptop. Blake quietly moved the untouched glass of water closer to me, while Nathan stood near the windows, watching the rain sweep across the Seattle skyline. None of them appeared surprised by the message. "You have heard that voice before," Damien said calmly. I shook my head. "No. I would remember." "Perhaps not with your memory," Julian replied softly, "but your instincts recognized her immediately." I wanted to argue. Yet I could not ignore the strange feeling inside my chest. The voice sounded unfamiliar, but it also carried a warmth that made me feel unexpectedly safe. Damien stepped toward the conference table and carefully placed the old photograph beside my phone. "Her name was Evelyn Miller," he said. "She disappeared 15 years ago." I looked back at the smiling woman in the picture. "You keep saying her name like I should know it." Damien held my gaze. Because she was trying to protect you before she vanished. My heart pounded harder. Protect me from what? No one answered immediately. Instead, Julian enlarged another document on his screen. It showed a complicated network of corporations connected through investment funds and charitable foundations. One company sat at the center of everything. Caldwell Consortium. Your mother helped create a technology capable of protecting sensitive financial identities, Julian explained. After she disappeared, someone spent years trying to erase every trace of her work and every person connected to her. Blake folded his arms thoughtfully. Including you. I laughed once, more from disbelief than humor. That is impossible. I am an event coordinator. I organize conferences and corporate dinners. Nobody has spent years hunting me. Nathan calmly placed a thin folder in front of me. Read the first page. My fingers hesitated before opening it. The document contained copies of newspaper articles dating back nearly 2 decades. The names had been highlighted in yellow. Evelyn Miller. Missing entrepreneur. Unknown child. Financial investigation closed. My breathing slowed as another photograph slipped from inside the folder. This one showed the front entrance of a small suburban house. I recognized it immediately. It had been my childhood home. How did you get this? I whispered. Damien answered quietly. We have been watching over that address for years. I looked up so quickly that the chair nearly scraped across the polished floor. Watching me? Protecting you, he corrected. There is a difference. Before I could respond, every light inside the suite flickered once. The room fell into darkness for only a second before. Emergency power restored the soft ceiling lights. Julian frowned at the security monitor. That was not caused by the storm. His fingers moved rapidly across the keyboard. Someone just attempted to access the hotel's internal surveillance network. Blake stepped toward another display mounted beside the fireplace. Camera feeds from multiple hallways appeared across the screen. Every corridor remained empty except one. A maintenance worker wearing a reflective jacket pushed a utility cart toward the private elevator reserved for executive guests. Blake's friendly smile disappeared. That employee does not work here. Nathan immediately picked up the hotel phone and quietly spoke to building security. Damien never looked away from the monitor. He is not here to repair anything. The maintenance worker suddenly stopped beside the elevator, glanced directly toward one of the cameras, and slowly removed a folded piece of paper from his pocket before placing it on top of the utility cart. Moments later, he calmly walked away without entering the elevator. Security officers arrived less than a minute later, but the man had already vanished. Blake enlarged the camera image until the paper became readable. 3 words had been written in large black letters. He has the key. I instinctively looked down at the silver bracelet wrapped around my wrist. Damien noticed the movement immediately. He closed the folder, picked up the old photograph, and quietly said the one sentence that erased any remaining doubt that my ordinary life had ended forever. Tomorrow morning, we are taking you to the place where your mother disappeared. Sleep never came. The storm finally weakened before sunrise, but the questions inside my head only grew louder. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard the woman's voice telling me not to trust all 4 of them. Yet every time I opened them, I found the same for alpha billionaires quietly preparing for the morning instead of treating me like a prisoner. Damien stood near the windows reviewing weather reports with remarkable patience. Julian worked through encrypted files without saying a word. Blake somehow convinced the hotel kitchen to prepare breakfast despite the citywide emergency. Nathan was already speaking with attorneys and government officials about road closures. None of them asked me to believe them. They simply continued protecting me as though that decision had been made years before I ever walked into this room. I finally broke the silence. If I leave right now, will any of you stop me? Blake looked toward Damien before answering. No. Nathan nodded in agreement. You are free to leave. Julian closed his laptop. But we strongly recommend that you do not. I turned my attention toward Damien. Why? He met my eyes with the same calm expression that had unsettled me since last night. Because the people looking for you already know your face. Before I could respond, Julian rotated another monitor toward me. Security footage from the hotel lobby showed several individuals calmly sitting in different waiting areas. They looked like ordinary travelers reading newspapers, drinking coffee, or checking their phones. Those guests arrived separately, Julian explained. They checked in using different names and different identification. However, every phone inside the lobby connected to the same encrypted communication network. Blake enlarged another image. They have not entered the elevators. They are waiting. Nathan added quietly, for you. My stomach tightened. Who are they? Damien answered without hesitation. People working for Caldwell Consortium. I looked back at the company name displayed across Julian's investigation files. What do they want from me? Julian pointed toward the silver bracelet on my wrist. We believe they want whatever that bracelet protects. I slowly removed the bracelet for the first time in years. The polished silver felt heavier than I remembered. Tiny cedar branches surrounded a nearly invisible circular design engraved into the inside surface. Blake leaned forward slightly. May I? I hesitated before placing the bracelet into his open hand. Instead of examining the outside, he gently pressed both thumbs against opposite sides of the engraving. A nearly silent click echoed through the room. The bracelet separated into two thin layers, revealing an impossibly small metallic storage device hidden inside. I stared in disbelief. That has been there all this time. Blake carefully nodded. Someone built this with extraordinary precision. Julian immediately connected the device to a secure reader. A progress bar slowly appeared across his monitor before stopping halfway. Encrypted, he whispered. Military-grade encryption. Nathan folded his arms thoughtfully. Whoever created this expected it to remain hidden for many years. Damien looked directly at me. Your mother was one of the few people capable of designing something like this. My thoughts raced as another impossible question formed. If she created it, why give it to me? Nobody answered because nobody knew. Instead, the storage device suddenly unlocked by itself. The monitor displayed a single file labeled only with today's date. Every person in the room exchanged surprised glances. Julian opened the file. A digital map of Washington state filled the screen before slowly zooming toward the Cascade Mountains east of Seattle. One location began flashing in bright blue beside an old cedar forest. Beneath the map, 7 words appeared one at a time. Trust the one who lets you choose. The room fell completely silent. Blake looked confused. Nathan quietly reread the sentence. Julian checked the file for hidden information but found nothing else. I looked from one alpha to another, remembering the warning from the voicemail. Do not trust all 4 of them. Then I looked at Damien. He did not ask me to believe him. He did not tell me to follow him. He simply stepped away from the door and said, "The choice is yours, Evan. If you want answers, I will take you there. If you decide to leave instead, nobody in this room will stop you." For the first time since everything began, I realized he was giving me something no one else had offered. A choice. I looked down at the glowing map one final time before quietly picking up the bracelet and fastening it around my wrist again. Take me to the cedar forest, I said. Just as Damien gave a small nod, Julian's phone vibrated. His expression changed instantly as he read the incoming alert. He slowly lifted his eyes toward the rest of us. Someone reached Evan's adoptive father before we did. Julian lowered his phone without saying another word, but the concern in his eyes told me everything before he spoke. Your father is safer now, he said carefully. However, someone visited his house less than 20 minutes ago. My heart immediately tightened. Did they speak to him? Nathan answered before Julian could continue. According to local security cameras, they asked questions about you, then left when they realized he was not home. I reached for my own phone again, but Damien gently raised one hand. Call him. There was no hesitation or attempt to stop me. I dialed my father's number with trembling fingers. After the third ring, his familiar voice answered. Evan? Thank goodness. I have been trying to reach you all morning. Relief washed over me so quickly that I nearly lost my balance. Dad, are you all right? I am fine, he replied, though he sounded unusually nervous. 2 people stopped by the house asking whether you had come home. They claimed they worked for a private investigation company, but something did not feel right. I closed my eyes for a moment. Did you tell them anything? No. I remembered what your mother asked me to promise years ago. I froze. My mother. The room became completely silent. Even the 4 alpha billionaires stopped moving. My father sighed softly. There are things I never wanted to hide from you, Evan. I only promised I would wait until the right time. My heartbeat grew louder. Dad, what are you talking about? His answer came slowly, as though he had rehearsed these words for many years. The woman who left you with me was named Evelyn Miller. My hand tightened around the phone. Across the room, Damien quietly closed his eyes for a brief second. Julian looked toward the encrypted map still glowing on the monitor. Blake lowered his head, while Nathan calmly listened without interrupting. She arrived at my house during a heavy rainstorm, my father continued. You could not have been more than 5 years old. She carried that silver bracelet in one hand and your favorite stuffed bear in the other. She asked me to keep both safe until someone worthy came looking for you. I could barely breathe. Why never tell me? Because she believed people would search for you if they knew your real name. She begged me to let you grow up as an ordinary boy. Tears gathered in my eyes before I even realized it. Every birthday, every school event, every quiet evening at our small dining table suddenly carried a new meaning. My father had never treated me as anything except his son, even while protecting a secret that could have changed both our lives. Dad, I whispered, did she ever come back? A long silence followed. Only once, he finally answered. She watched you playing baseball in the neighborhood park from across the street. She never walked over because she believed someone was following her. Before leaving, she handed me an envelope and told me not to open it unless you chose to search for your past. My eyes immediately met Damien's. He said nothing. He simply waited. Where is the envelope now? I asked. Still exactly where she told me to keep it, my father replied. Inside the old cedar chest in our attic. The word cedar echoed through the room. Julian immediately looked toward the digital map of the Cascade Mountains. Nathan quietly compared several notes. Blake gave Damien a thoughtful glance. None of them spoke first. I did. The cedar forest. The cedar tree on the bracelet. The cedar chest. Damien nodded slowly. She wanted every clue to lead you toward the same place. My father spoke once more before ending the call. Evan, whatever happens next, remember one thing. She never wanted you to become powerful. She only wanted you to remain kind. The line disconnected, leaving those final words hanging in the quiet suite. I slipped the phone into my pocket while trying to steady my breathing. Damien picked up his car keys from the conference table but did not hand them to anyone else. The highways are reopening, he said. If we leave now, we can reach your father's house before sunset. I nodded without hesitation. Just as Blake unlocked the suite door, Julian's tablet emitted a sharp notification. He studied the incoming satellite image for only a few seconds before his expression turned serious. A black luxury SUV had already parked across the street from my father's home, and someone inside was holding an identical photograph of the little boy standing beside Evelyn Miller. The drive out of Seattle felt strangely quiet after everything that had happened inside the hotel. Rain clouds slowly drifted east while sunlight finally broke through the grey morning sky, illuminating miles of evergreen forest stretching toward the Cascade Mountains. I sat in the back seat beside Blake while Julian worked on his laptop from the passenger seat. Nathan quietly reviewed legal documents on a tablet, and Damien remained focused on the winding highway ahead. Nobody tried to fill the silence with empty conversation. My father's words continued repeating inside my mind. She never wanted you to become powerful. She only wanted you to remain kind. I looked down at the silver bracelet around my wrist, wondering how something so small could carry the weight of an entire forgotten life. Nearly 2 hours later, Damien slowed the vehicle as we entered the familiar neighborhood where I had grown up. Everything looked exactly as I remembered. The small grocery store still stood on the corner. The neighborhood baseball field remained empty after the recent storm. The maple tree in front of our house had grown taller, but the white porch and blue shutters looked unchanged. My chest tightened with relief when I saw my father standing safely on the front porch. The black luxury sport utility vehicle that Julian had spotted earlier was gone. Before I could open the door, Damien calmly spoke. "Stay with us until we know the property is secure." I nodded without arguing. Somehow his requests no longer felt like commands. They felt like careful promises. Julian quietly walked around the outside of the house while Blake checked the detached garage and backyard. Nathan greeted my father warmly before introducing himself as the family's attorney. Within minutes, Julian returned and gave a small nod. "Nobody is here now." My father embraced me tightly the moment I stepped onto the porch. "I was worried," he admitted. "So was I answered. Honestly. After a few quiet moments, he invited all of us inside. The familiar scent of fresh coffee and cedar furniture immediately reminded me of every peaceful morning I had spent growing up in this home. Damien looked around the modest living room with quiet respect instead of curiosity. Blake smiled at the family photographs displayed above the fireplace. Nathan thanked my father for protecting me all these years, while Julian's attention briefly settled on an old wooden staircase leading toward the attic. My father noticed. "The cedar chest is still up there," he said softly. "I have not opened it since the day she left." My heartbeat quickened as we climbed the narrow stairs together. Dust floated through thin beams of afternoon sunlight entering the attic windows. Old holiday decorations, worn baseball equipment, childhood books, and forgotten boxes surrounded a beautifully carved cedar chest resting beneath the highest window. I recognized it immediately, although I had never wondered why my father always told me not to play with it as a child. He carefully placed an old brass key into the lock. The lid opened with a gentle creak. Inside rested a neatly folded baby blanket, a faded stuffed bear missing one button eye, several family photographs, and a single cream-colored envelope sealed with dark blue wax bearing the same cedar tree engraved inside my bracelet. My father carefully lifted the envelope with both hands before placing it into mine. "She asked me to let you decide when you were ready," he whispered. I stared at the elegant handwriting across the front. It simply read, "For Evan." No one else reached toward it. Damien folded his hands behind his back. Blake quietly stepped farther away. Julian closed his laptop. Nathan removed his glasses and waited silently. They were giving me exactly what the hidden message inside the bracelet had described. A choice. My fingers carefully broke the old wax seal before unfolding the first page inside. Instead of a letter, I found a hand-drawn map leading deep into a cedar forest east of the mountains. Beneath the map, only one sentence had been written in my mother's graceful handwriting. "If you are reading this, it means I succeeded in keeping you alive long enough to find the truth yourself." Before I could continue reading, a second folded page slipped from the envelope onto the attic floor. Damien bent down to retrieve it but stopped the instant he saw the signature written across the bottom. His calm expression disappeared for the first time since I had met him. Quietly, almost as if speaking to himself, he whispered, "Victoria Caldwell signed this 15 years ago." Damien carefully lifted the second page from the attic floor without unfolding it completely. He looked at the signature one more time before handing the document directly to me instead of keeping it for himself. That single decision did not go unnoticed. He could have read every word before I ever saw it, yet he chose not to. I slowly opened the folded page while everyone else remained silent. The document was not a contract or a business agreement as I had expected. It was a handwritten letter signed by Victoria Caldwell. Every sentence felt strangely formal, almost like a confession disguised as a promise. 15 years earlier, Victoria had agreed to protect Evelyn Miller and her child in exchange for temporary control of Miller Technologies until the investigation surrounding the company ended. At the bottom of the page, another signature appeared beneath Victoria's. Evelyn Miller. My breathing slowed as I looked from the paper to Damien. If they signed this together, why has everyone treated Victoria like my enemy? Damien answered honestly. Because something changed after that agreement was written. Julian stepped closer with his laptop already open. The digital archives contain no record of this document. It was intentionally erased from every known database. Nathan adjusted his glasses before studying the paper from a respectful distance. Legally speaking, this letter proves they cooperated at one point. It does not explain why they became opponents. Blake leaned against an old wooden beam, quietly thinking through the new information. Or whether they truly became opponents at all. His words settled heavily over the attic. Until now, every clue had pointed toward one obvious villain. Suddenly nothing felt certain anymore. I returned to my mother's first letter and continued reading aloud. She wrote that truth could survive only if it remained hidden long enough for the right person to uncover it willingly. She warned me never to follow people simply because they claimed to protect me. Instead, she told me to pay attention to the person who respected my choices, even when my decisions frightened them. I stopped reading for a moment without realizing my eyes had drifted toward Damien. He looked away first, almost as though he did not want to influence my thoughts. My father quietly placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. She always believed freedom was more important than power, he said softly. Even when it made life more difficult. Julian suddenly received a secure notification across his laptop screen. His expression immediately sharpened. I found something. He connected the attic television to his computer, displaying a scanned newspaper from 16 years earlier. The headline announced a charitable partnership between Miller Technologies and Caldwell Consortium. Standing side by side in the accompanying photograph were Evelyn Miller and Victoria Caldwell, both smiling naturally for the cameras. There was no sign of fear, anger, or rivalry between them. Blake slowly crossed his arms. That is not the relationship we were told about. Nathan quietly nodded. Somebody rewrote history. Before anyone could continue, another alert appeared on Julian's screen. This one came from a private satellite monitoring service used by Hayes Global Security. A familiar black sport utility vehicle had entered a mountain road leading toward the exact cedar forest marked on my mother's map. The vehicle stopped beside a narrow hiking trail before two people stepped out carrying surveying equipment instead of luggage. Julian enlarged the image. One of them unfolded a printed map identical to the one lying in my hands. They know where the forest is, Julian said. And they are already there. My father looked worried for the first time all afternoon. If that place contains the answers your mother left behind, they cannot reach it before you do. I looked around the attic at the 4 alpha billionaires who had turned my ordinary life upside down in less than 24 hours. None of them tried to make the decision for me. Nathan simply packed the documents into a protective folder. Blake carefully closed the cedar chest. Julian disconnected his laptop. Damien waited quietly beside the attic stairs. Every pair of eyes eventually turned toward me because the next choice belonged to no one else. I folded my mother's map, slipped it into my jacket, and took a steady breath. We're going to the cedar forest, I said. Damien gave a single calm nod before opening the attic door, but just as we started downstairs, Julian's phone rang. He listened for only a few seconds before his face lost all color. The weather station just reported something unusual, he said quietly. The old suspension bridge leading into the cedar forest collapsed 10 minutes ago, but somehow the black sport utility vehicle is already on the other side. The news about the collapsed suspension bridge followed us all the way to the vehicles parked outside my father's house. I unfolded my mother's map once more while Damien studied the mountain roads displayed on Julian's navigation system. The marked destination lay deep inside an old cedar forest beyond the damaged bridge, but another narrow service road curved around the eastern ridge. It was longer by nearly 18 miles, yet it remained open. Blake glanced toward Damien. If they already crossed the bridge, they will arrive first. Damien looked at me instead of answering him. Do you still want to go? That simple question reminded me once again why my mother's hidden message had pointed toward the person who respected my choices. I folded the map and nodded. Yes. Damien started the engine without another word. The drive became quieter as the city disappeared behind us and endless forests replaced busy highways. Towering cedar trees lined both sides of the winding mountain road while sunlight filtered through the branches after the morning storm. Julian continuously monitored satellite images on his laptop. Nathan compared historical property records connected to the forest. Blake carefully examined the handwritten map beside me, occasionally matching old landmarks with modern roads. After another hour, Julian suddenly broke the silence. The black sport utility vehicle has stopped moving. Damien kept his eyes on the road. Mechanical problem? No, Julian replied. It is parked beside an abandoned ranger station approximately 3 miles from the marked location. Nathan leaned closer to the screen. There are no additional vehicles. Blake frowned thoughtfully. Either they continued on foot, or they want someone to believe they did. I looked down at my mother's map again. Several small handwritten symbols surrounded the final destination. One of them resembled the cedar tree engraved inside my bracelet. Another looked like a small wooden cabin. My father had never mentioned any cabin. Neither had the documents from the hotel. Julian, I asked quietly, can you search historical maps instead of current satellite images? He immediately understood my reasoning. Within moments, an old forestry survey from more than 20 years earlier appeared on the display. Hidden beneath layers of archived records stood a tiny structure identified simply as Cedar Research Cabin. Blake looked surprised. That building does not appear on modern maps. Nathan calmly smiled for the first time that day. Which usually means someone wanted it forgotten. Damien slowed the vehicle as we reached an overlook above the valley. Far below, the broken suspension bridge stretched across a rushing mountain river, confirming the weather report had been accurate. The damaged crossing could not be used, but the eastern service road continued safely around the ridge exactly as Julian had predicted. We drove another 30 minutes before finally reaching a weathered wooden gate marking the entrance to protected forest land. A faded sign welcomed visitors to Cedar Ridge Nature Preserve. My heartbeat quickened as I noticed the same cedar tree symbol carved into the corner of the old sign. It matched the engraving hidden inside my bracelet perfectly. Damien parked beside the trailhead but remained seated for a moment. From here, he said quietly, we walk. Nobody argued. Julian packed the laptop into a weatherproof backpack. Nathan secured the legal documents inside a protective case. Blake handed me a lightweight hiking jacket because the mountain air felt noticeably cooler beneath the dense trees. We followed the narrow trail beneath towering cedars where birdsong replaced the sounds of traffic and city life. Every few hundred yards, another cedar symbol appeared carved into weathered wooden posts, guiding us deeper into the forest exactly as the hand-drawn map predicted. I began to understand that this route had never been random. Someone had carefully prepared it years ago, expecting that one day I would follow it. Nearly 40 minutes later, the trees opened into a quiet clearing filled with warm afternoon sunlight. At its center stood a beautifully preserved cedar cabin that looked untouched by time. Fresh flowers bloomed beneath the windows. Smoke rose gently from a stone chimney even though no modern records mentioned anyone living there. My breathing caught as I noticed one final detail. Resting on the front porch was the black sport utility vehicle from the satellite images, but but every door stood open, the keys remained in the ignition, and not a single person could be seen anywhere around the cabin. Then the front door slowly creaked open by itself, and an elderly woman's calm voice drifted across the clearing. "Evan, I have been waiting for you." The elderly woman waited quietly on the porch until I slowly stepped forward. Damien moved beside me without blocking my path, while Julian, Blake, and Nathan remained several steps behind, allowing me to make every decision for myself. As I reached the wooden steps, the woman smiled with unmistakable warmth. "You have your mother's eyes," she said softly. Tears gathered before I could answer. "Who are you?" She gently placed one hand over her heart. "My name is Margaret Lawson. Your mother trusted me more than anyone outside our family. She welcomed us into the cedar cabin where photographs filled every wall." My breath caught as I recognized my mother smiling in dozens of pictures spanning many years. She looked happy, hopeful, and completely unlike the frightened figure I had imagined for so long. Margaret carefully opened an old cedar box resting on the fireplace mantel. Inside were journals, research files, and one final recorded message. She handed the small recorder directly to me. "She wanted you to hear her voice only when you were ready." My hands trembled as I pressed the play button. My mother's gentle voice filled the quiet cabin. "Hello, Evan. If you are listening to this, then you found the path I prepared for you. I am sorry I could not give you an ordinary childhood, but I never regretted choosing your future over my own comfort. Victoria Caldwell was never your enemy. She agreed to protect our company while I disappeared because someone inside our own organization betrayed us. We decided together that history would remember us as rivals if it meant keeping you alive. Trust the people who allow you to choose your own future. Never let power become more important than kindness." The recording ended, leaving only silence. Nathan carefully examined the journals and quickly located years of financial records proving that Caldwell Consortium had secretly preserved Miller Technologies instead of stealing it. Julian confirmed the documents matched encrypted archives recovered from the bracelet. Blake quietly smiled. "Your mother planned every step." Before anyone spoke again, the front door opened once more. An elegant woman entered slowly, her silver hair catching the afternoon sunlight. I recognized her immediately from the photographs. Victoria Caldwell looked directly at me with tears in her eyes. "Your mother asked me to wait until you discovered the truth yourself," she said. "Had I come sooner, you never would have believed me." She explained that Evelyn had remained hidden while exposing the real conspirators who had attempted to seize the company's research years earlier. Those responsible had already been identified through the encrypted files hidden inside my bracelet, allowing federal investigators to complete an inquiry that had remained unresolved for more than a decade. Everything my mother had sacrificed had protected not only me but countless employees whose work had been preserved instead of exploited. Several weeks later, the truth became public. Miller Technologies reopened under an independent charitable foundation dedicated to medical research and community health programs. Victoria stepped away from leadership exactly as my mother had requested years earlier. Nathan completed every legal transfer with complete transparency. Julian released the verified historical records. Blake organized scholarships honoring Evelyn Miller's legacy. Together we established the Evelyn Foundation to support young Omegas pursuing education, leadership, and opportunity without fear or limitation. Throughout every meeting and every public announcement, the 4 Alpha billionaires stood beside me, but none of them spoke for me. During the Foundation's opening ceremony, reporters repeatedly asked which Alpha I had chosen. Before anyone else answered, Damien calmly stepped back from the microphones and quietly said, "Evan belongs to no one except himself." The crowd fell silent. In that single moment, I finally understood my mother's message. Love was never proven through possession. It was proven through trust. After the ceremony ended, Damien began walking toward his car without expecting anything in return. I watched him take several steps before calling his name. He turned with the same calm expression that had protected me from the very beginning. I walked across the courtyard and reached for his hand. "You respected every choice I made," I said. Now this is my choice." A quiet smile finally appeared on his face as our hands met. Julian, Blake, and Nathan exchanged warm smiles instead of disappointment because they had always wanted my happiness more than victory. Looking back on everything that happened, I realized for Alpha Billionaires promised they would protect me, but only one loved me enough to let me choose him.